coming from it from a totally different side of the space, I realized that this is the answer as far as I'm concerned. I think it's the future of our financial systems, and I want to make sure that's domiciled in America, done by Americans, with that security, etc.
Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen, all in crypto here, and welcome back, guys, for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed daily market update. We drop one of these updates every single day around 1 p.m. UK time to help you guys stay up to date with the latest and greatest things happening in the crypto space, but also the broader markets. That's exactly what we're going to be doing in this video. Many people probably got their Fridays ruined this morning by their Coinbase notifications. The markets, of course, are selling off somewhat. But it's a very normal day in the cryptocurrency space. You've got to take the rough with the smooth, and Bitcoin is down around about 2.2% this morning. There's a lot of options expiring. It's around about, is it $16 billion worth of options expiring on Bitcoin today? We'll kind of get into all of that, and we'll also look at more broadly what's plaguing the markets. I'll reiterate what I spoke about a little bit yesterday. And few people have done the historical context of a new presidential regime, certainly from the inauguration period in the first few months that follow it. Typically the markets do sell off due to uncertainty, but then they'll rebound in kind of your April, May period and start to see continuation in the direction from whence they came, which, you know, the S&P, just like houses, just like everything, continues to go up against a devaluing money system, which is why Bitcoin was really introduced to us. So we will start the video off there, and then we'll look at what Donald Trump Jr. actually said at the DAS. Now, I should have played this clip because it was a brilliant clip that very much confirms, and Donald Trump himself has said this, that the future of America's financial system is ran on blockchains. That is a fact. And despite, I guess, fatigue plaguing the cryptocurrency space and certainly altcoin investors, it's really not such a bleak picture. And even if we start things off on the Bitcoin chart, you know, this is still in a very pronounced uptrend, in my opinion. And we are likely going to see continuation of it. We are just consolidating in and around or just above all-time highs after breaking them from this bull flag. When you look at the total cryptocurrency market cap, very much sort of pulling back around all-time highs. The total cryptocurrency market cap, excluding Bitcoin, so total 2, this is very much bull flag-esque. Having rejected off all-time highs, the total 3, very much similar story, and of course others. And I think all of these lead to upside, but there's macro uncertainty right now around things like tariffs. There was fresh ones just announced the other day on automobiles that are increasing perhaps people's or decreasing, I guess, people's economic forecasts based on all of this. Now, I've said actually I think Trump's tariff plan is going to result in lower tariffs across the board because they're reciprocal. It's not a good idea to escalate those. Certainly, you're going against the largest importer in the world, the biggest economy in the world, and the second largest exporter in the world when you're doing that. But the markets don't like uncertainty. And in the S&P 500, we looked at this yesterday, actually closed that gap that we were looking at. And we are, this is still a very normal pullback for the S&P 500. Let's go to the gap. Let's take the draw off. You can see it did bounce after closing this gap. We are expecting a bounce here and continuation. And once this starts to recover, it's very likely, almost definite that the cryptocurrency market is going to follow and bounce back in a big way. The crypto market's on kind of weak legs at the moment. There's a hell of a lot of options expiring today. Now, some of those options will have to be physically settled. I know Bitcoin isn't physical, but there's going to be volatility that's going to be introduced to that. And the market's really just looking for a reason to sell off today. Nothing major has kicked off whatsoever. This is just the volatile nature of the cryptocurrency space. When you get movements in either direction, there's a lot of leverage that takes place in crypto. And there's usually, it only takes one stop loss to get hit on a kind of decent sized account to sort of cascade the order books. But do not fear, for all in cryptos here. And we're still very confident on the direction this space is going. It's been a fatiguing time for the altcoin sector, but generally, if you look at the altcoin sector through the lens of Total 2, which is the altcoin sector, everything except for Bitcoin, it's been an interesting ride. These have been some pretty brutal pullbacks to endure, but we are still in an uptrend and we are still expecting continuation for that. And we're far more bullish on Trump and his economy than I think many people are. What I want to do now, before we dive into what took place yesterday with Paul Atkins, who is the at least chosen chair by Trump, he essentially has digital assets at the top of his priority as new SEC chair, which I think is very likely that he will be and he'll get sworn in. And we'll look at the fact that he holds crypto and what he's had to say in regards to it. And then we'll look at some funny things that came from the congressional hearing, which are definitely worth watching. But let's kick things off, or let's dive into, because on a day like this where there's a little bit of pessimism, let's remember what this industry is doing and what it's going to become. And you've got Donald Trump Jr. very much acknowledging this and showing a lot more of an understanding of it than perhaps his father, but truly grasping what's going on here. And that's an exciting prospect. And that's the prospect for us as investors in the cryptocurrency markets.
Why come into the cryptocurrency space? Why come in the blockchain industry? What about our industry philosophically was appealing to you, and what problems do you want to solve?
I think for me, it was really interesting, right? I came from a hard asset family. That's what we did. We built and sold and held real estate forever. And for a long period of time, I had access to everyone in the world. I could pick up and the phone and speak to any banker and get a loan almost instantly. And everything was sort of easy. And then all of a sudden we got into politics and we made our opinions known, and you put that little R next to your name, and all of a sudden that became really difficult. And I sort of realized very quickly just how much discrimination there is in the ordinary financial markets. Beyond the inefficiency, beyond the waste, the amount of bankers I know that make 7 figures a year, basically moving a piece of paper from one side of a desk to another, not really adding any value. It was such a rude awakening to just how discriminatory the entire market is, just how inefficient it was. And, as I started learning more about, crypto, blockchain, everything, you realized, wait a minute, this is the answer to all of this stuff. So I guess I jokingly said, I got myself in a little trouble. I jokingly said the first time I was asked this sort of question was like, I realized I was just at the top of the pyramid scheme. I didn't realize that. I realized that the entire, financial system and the entire banking world was really one big Ponzi scheme. I just had the benefit of being, in the upper echelon of that. And once I was at the bottom rung, and we're getting debanked and canceled for, simply having opinions that didn't go along with the fold, we became problematic. And all of a sudden we went from being, the golden children to persona non grata. And that made me really start thinking. And my brother, I guess collectively we're the most subpoenaed people in the history of the United States, all for nonsense, as we know now, but it didn't matter. You still had to deal with it at the time. And so when I started talking with Zach about it, Zach's dad, Chase, other Zach, I think we realized that there's a much better way to do this. There's a more efficient way to do this. And that's how we sort of went down the rabbit hole on all of this. So we're just super excited about this. But it was really probably the biggest rude awakening I've had. And that includes, having the U.S. government basically go after you and try to throw you in jail for nothing. And so I'm just super excited about what this can mean for the future of banking, for the future of the financial systems. And again, I was sort of the beneficiary of the old way of doing things. But that doesn't mean it's the best way of doing things. So I think we're just very excited to be here. Super excited. It's sort of interesting to talk in a room like this where I imagine everyone in the room has forgotten more about crypto than I'll ever know. That's the kind of level of attendees I've seen, and the panelists as well. But coming from a totally different side of the space, I realized that this is the answer as far as I'm concerned. I think it's the future of our financial systems, and I want to make sure that's domiciled in America, done by Americans, with that security, et cetera.
Future of our financial system, eh? Who'd have thought? Well, that very much is the course the cryptocurrency space is on. And it's important to remember that, certainly in days today where, it's kind of like, I think people are fed up with crypto. But just remember, there's an amazing opportunity here. It's not every day the entire financial system gets an overhaul. Obviously, Paul Atkins had a congressional hearing yesterday. Let's just kick things off, first of all, with what he's had to say. I've seen how ambiguous and nonsensical regulations of digital assets create uncertainty in the market and inhibition and inhibit innovation, Atkins said Thursday in his opening statement at the confirmation hearing before the Senate committee. The top priority of my chairmanship will be to work with my fellow commissioners and Congress to provide a firm regulatory foundation for digital assets through a rational, coherent, and principled approach. Of course, we know Paul Atkins is, he served, or he had a seat on the board at Securitize. He owns cryptocurrency. He had to disclose, $327 million in assets. A chunk of that was in the cryptocurrency space. And of course, there were just so many funny things that came out of yesterday. First of all, he gave a good speech. There was one where Hegarty was asking him about something. And this is an interesting clip that we'll just play to sort of wrap the video up before we dive back into some price action.
I'll start with you, Mr. Atkins. Man, you just have to be able to breathe and not be a complete raging lunatic, and you're going to be the greatest SEC commissioner compared to the last guy. I mean, congratulations on coming after Gary Gensler, who objectively probably was one of the stupidest people in government.
He's now teaching at he's back teaching at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. This is a revolving door for those people. And I think Gensler was enabled to do what he did for the kind of insiders, but there's so much going on. All major institutions are moving towards stable coins. All major institutions are moving towards this technology from a financial point of view. It's not long before you see that spread to more of a social perspective. Guys, hang in there. That's really it from me. I'm going to love and leave you. We'll see you tomorrow. We're seeing some short-term price action that perhaps isn't pleasing. Bitcoin just selling off a little bit. It's really a paper bag in the kind of macro wind. The cryptocurrency space, or plastic bag in the macro wind. And the altcoin sector really just is along for that ride. That's it from me, guys. I'll see you all in tomorrow's Daily Market Update.